Weston Sterling sat in his penthouse, high above the city that never slept. The floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a dazzling Manhattan skyline, a sea of light stretching into the horizon. Below, the world moved at a relentless pace. Limousines pulling up to exclusive parties, paparazzi waiting outside five-star hotels, men and women in designer suits chasing their next big deal. This was his world, a world of wealth, power, and success. And yet, it felt empty. The crystal tumbler in his hand was half full, the amber liquid inside untouched. He didn't drink much, but tonight he felt the weight of something he couldn't name pressing against his chest. His phone vibrated against the polished mahogany table. A text: Bronte Langford invites you to celebrate her wedding to James Mercer. Weston exhaled sharply, his grip tightening around the glass. A wedding invitation from the woman who had left him a year ago without hesitation. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. A year ago, Bronte had stood in this very penthouse, her eyes cold and calculating, telling him she needed more in life. That he, despite his wealth, wasn't enough. And now, she had the audacity to invite him to watch her walk down the aisle, with someone richer, someone more powerful. He tossed the invitation onto the table, watching it slide across the glass surface like an afterthought. Maybe that's what he had been to her. A stepping stone, a chapter in her carefully curated life story. Unbelievable, he muttered. A voice from the other side of the room chuckled. You look like you're about to set that thing on fire. Weston turned to see Caleb Moore, his oldest friend, leaning against the bar with an amused expression. Dressed in his usual tailored suit, Caleb looked effortlessly sharp, the kind of man who thrived in boardrooms and cocktail parties alike. Don't tempt me, Weston said, rubbing his temple. Caleb strolled over, plucking the invitation from the table and skimming it. Let me guess, she wants to remind you of what you lost, or maybe what she lost. Weston scoffed. Please, Bronte doesn't lose. She upgrades. Caleb smirked. So, what's the plan? Ignore it? Send a gift to be petty? Or are you actually considering going? Weston didn't answer, because a small, dark part of him was considering it. Not out of heartbreak, not because he still wanted her, but because the thought of showing up, proving to her, and to himself, that he was unshaken, was tempting. Caleb watched him carefully, then grinned. You should go, but don't go alone. Weston arched a brow. And who exactly would I bring? Caleb shrugged. Doesn't matter. You just need someone who'll turn heads, someone Bronte won't be able to ignore. Weston let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, and where do I find someone like that? Caleb sipped his drink, smirking. In this city, you could probably walk outside and find someone. It was meant as a joke, but Weston's mind latched onto the idea. Maybe Caleb was onto something. If Bronte wanted to play games, why not play back? The thought lingered as he stared out the window, the city sprawling beneath him like a chessboard. The next evening, Weston found himself walking through Central Park. The air was crisp, the distant hum of traffic mixing with the soft rustle of leaves. He wasn't sure why he had come here. Maybe to clear his head, or maybe because some part of him was searching for an answer to Caleb's ridiculous idea. And that's when he saw her. She was sitting on a bench, a battered book in her hands, completely absorbed. The world moved around her, but she didn't seem to notice. Her dark hair was slightly tousled, her clothes worn but clean, her posture relaxed, yet guarded. People passed her by without a second glance, but Weston noticed something in the way she carried herself. There was no desperation, no pleading in her eyes, just quiet resilience. A man tossed a few crumpled bills at her feet, not even stopping. She barely looked up before reaching down, picking up the money, and standing. Hey, she called out after him. The man turned surprised. Bella held out the money. I think you dropped this. The man blinked. It's for you. She gave him a small, sharp smile. I didn't ask for it. For a long second, the man hesitated, then awkwardly took the money back before hurrying off. Weston watched, intrigued. She didn't want pity. She didn't take handouts. He stepped forward before he could overthink it. That was interesting to watch. She turned, her gaze settling on him with mild curiosity. People assume too much. Like what? That just because I'm sitting here I must want something from them. Weston studied her, then gestured to the book in her hands. Good read. She glanced down at it, then back at him. Better than most conversations I've had today. A slow smile tugged at Weston's lips. She was sharp. He liked that. I have a proposal, he said. She lifted a brow. Oh, this should be good. I need a wedding date. That got her attention. She laughed, shaking her head. That's a new one. I'm serious. She eyed him skeptically. Why? He considered lying, saying it was just for fun, but something about her made him want to be honest. My ex is getting married. I'd rather not show up alone. Bella tilted her head, assessing him. So you want to make her jealous? Weston smirked. Something like that. She crossed her arms. And why me? He gestured around. You're the first person I met today who doesn't seem remotely impressed by me. She let out a quiet laugh. I don't even know who you are. Exactly. A pause. Then she nodded toward his suit. You're obviously rich. Guilty. She looked him over again, as if debating. What's in it for me? He hadn't thought that far ahead. A place to stay for a while, and whatever you need after that. Her lips twitched, but she didn't answer right away. Then, after a beat, she said, I don't need saving. Weston held up his hands. Good, because I'm not offering that. Just an opportunity. Bella exhaled, considering. Then, to his surprise, she smiled slightly. All right, Weston Sterling. Let's see where this goes. Weston sat in the back of his Blacktown car, the quiet hum of the city filling the silence between him and Bella. She sat across from him, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the glittering lights outside. Even in a sleek, tailored dress that cost more than some people's monthly rent, she still carried herself with the same quiet defiance he had noticed in Central Park. It was as if the expensive fabric and carefully styled hair didn't touch her at all. She didn't preen or admire herself in the reflection of the tinted windows. She didn't fidget or ask for his opinion. If anything, she looked detached, almost bored. That intrigued him. Most women who stepped into his world weren't indifferent. They were eager to impress, to show they belonged. Bella, on the other hand, acted as if she had nothing to prove. And maybe she didn't. He studied her profile, the way she watched the city, but never really focused on anything in particular. You're quiet, he said. Bella didn't turn to face him. Do you expect me to entertain you? Weston smirked. It's a long drive. I wouldn't mind some conversation. She exhaled softly, finally shifting her attention to him. All right, let's start with the obvious. Why are you doing this? I told you, I don't want to show up alone. Her gaze narrowed slightly, reading between the lines. That's the easy answer. What's the real one? Weston leaned back, amused. Most people wouldn't have pushed. Most would have accepted his explanation at face value. He tilted his head, considering her. And what do you think the real answer is? Bella studied him in return, silent for a long moment. Then, with quiet certainty, she said, You want to remind her of what she lost. Weston chuckled under his breath. Is that so? You want to prove something, she continued, crossing one leg over the other. That you're fine, that you're better off without her, that you don't care. A pause. Then, with a small smirk, she added, Which means you do care, at least a little. Weston's smirk faded slightly. He didn't like how easily she peeled back the layers. What about you? he countered, shifting the focus. You agreed pretty quickly. Why? Bella turned back to the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Because I'm tired. That caught him off guard. Tired? Tired of being invisible. Tired of people seeing me and assuming they know my story. Her fingers trailed along the edge of her dress, the only sign that she was anything less than composed. This is a chance to be something different, even if it's just for one night. There was something raw in her tone, something that hinted at a past far more complicated than she let on. Weston didn't press. Instead, he let the silence settle between them again. It wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it was charged with an unspoken understanding. The car slowed, pulling up to the entrance of an exclusive hotel. The kind of place where the doormen never made eye contact unless spoken to, where the chandeliers in the lobby cost more than most homes. Bella didn't react. She didn't gape at the grand entrance or hesitate before stepping out of the car. She simply gathered the fabric of her dress, slid out with effortless grace, and looked up at the building as if she had seen it 1,000 times before. Weston followed, offering his arm instinctively. She didn't take it. He smirked. You really don't like being predictable, do you? Bella glanced at him. Where's the fun in that? A short chuckle escaped him as they entered the hotel, their arrival drawing subtle glances from the elite patrons lingering near the bar. The elevator ride to his penthouse was silent, but the air between them was anything but. When the doors opened, Bella stepped inside first, taking in the space. It was modern, sleek, almost too pristine, as if no one actually lived there. She walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the skyline. Nice view, she murmured. Weston loosened his tie, watching her. You've been in places like this before. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He saw it in the way she carried herself, in the way she didn't fidget or act overwhelmed. Bella didn't deny it. She simply turned, meeting his gaze with something unreadable. Not in a long time. Weston tilted his head. You going to tell me your story? She smiled slightly, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Not yet. Something about the way she said it made him want to know. Not out of curiosity. Out of something deeper. He nodded toward the hallway. Your room is down there. Get some rest. We have a big night tomorrow. Bella held his gaze for a second longer, then turned and walked away without another word. Weston watched her disappear down the hall, then exhaled. Something told him that this was the beginning of something he wasn't entirely prepared for. Weston sat at the kitchen island, nursing a cup of black coffee, his thoughts a tangled mess. The quiet hum of the penthouse at dawn was usually calming, but this morning something unsettled him. Bella. She was still here. Most people in her position would have spent the night marveling at the luxury, testing out the silk sheets, running their hands over the polished marble counters, letting themselves get lost in the dream of it all. But Bella. Not a single sound from her room. No curiosity, no movement, just silence. He glanced at the clock. 6:45 a.m. He should be thinking about his day, about work, about the wedding tomorrow. But instead, he was thinking about the woman sleeping just down the hall. Or was she? As if on cue, the soft click of a door opening reached his ears. He turned. Bella stepped out of the guest room, dressed in one of the simple but elegant outfits his assistant had left for her. A fitted beige sweater, slim black pants. The transformation from the woman he met in the park was striking. But what stood out the most wasn't the clothes. It was how effortlessly she carried them, like she had worn things like this before. She walked toward the window, stretching her arms slightly, looking out at the view of Manhattan just waking up. The golden light caught the edge of her profile, highlighting the sharp angles of her face, the way her eyes flickered with something he couldn't quite place. You're up early, he said. She didn't turn. force of habit. Old life or new one? A faint smirk tugged at her lips as she finally faced him. What do you think? He set his coffee down, intrigued. I think you weren't always living on park benches. Bella didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped toward the counter, picked up an apple from the fruit bowl, and examined it as if she were deciding whether it was real or just another part of the illusion. I was waiting for you to ask. Weston leaned back in his chair. And? She took a slow bite, chewing thoughtfully before speaking. I used to be someone else, but that version of me doesn't exist anymore. That's convenient, isn't it? She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Let me guess. You want details. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious. Bella set the apple down, folding her arms across her chest. People like you always are. He arched a brow. People like me. Men with money. Men who have everything but get bored too easily. She tilted her head slightly, studying him now. Let me guess. You don't actually care where I come from. You just don't like not knowing. Weston exhaled a quiet laugh. Maybe. Bella gave a slow nod, as if confirming something to herself. Then she reached for the coffee cup he hadn't touched, took a small sip, and set it back down with a smirk. Bitter. Strong. Same thing? Their eyes locked, a silent challenge lingering in the air between them. Weston should have been annoyed by her ability to get under his skin. Most people were too intimidated to push him, too afraid to say anything that wasn't dripping in flattery. But Bella, she wasn't afraid of him at all. And that made him even more interested. Before he could say anything else, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Caleb. He answered, keeping his eyes on Bella. Tell me you have something good. Caleb's voice came through, dry as ever. That depends on your definition of good. You're officially the talk of the city. Weston sighed, rubbing his temple. Already? You know how this works. One high-profile dinner with a mystery woman, and the speculation machine goes into overdrive. Weston's jaw tightened slightly. He should have expected this. Last night, before returning to the penthouse, he had taken Bella to a quiet dinner at a private club. Quiet by his standards anyway. But nothing in his world ever stayed quiet for long. And, Caleb continued, Bronte's already caught wind of it. That got Bella's attention. She leaned against the counter, watching his reaction closely. Weston kept his expression neutral. How do you know? Caleb let out a short laugh. Because she just called me. Apparently she's very interested in knowing who your new companion is. Weston smirked. Jealous? Annoyed? Maybe a little intrigued. Weston glanced at Bella. She was still watching him, calm, composed, as if this was just another ordinary conversation. Tell her she'll find out at the wedding, he said. Caleb chuckled. Oh, you're playing with fire, my friend. Weston hung up without responding. Bella tapped her fingers against the counter, tilting her head slightly. So she took the bait. She always does. Bella exhaled softly, shaking her head. People like Bronte. They don't get jealous because they miss you. They get jealous because they hate the idea of someone else taking their place. Weston smirked, speaking from experience. Bella's lips parted slightly, as if she was about to say something, but then she stopped herself. Instead, she reached for the coffee cup again, taking another sip before setting it down. I think you're underestimating her, she said finally. Weston frowned slightly. Bronte? She's not stupid. She won't just sit back and let you upstage her at her own wedding. Weston leaned against the counter. What do you think she'll do? Bella met his gaze, something flickering in her expression. Something dangerously close to amusement. I guess we'll find out. For the first time since this plan had formed in his mind, Weston felt something close to doubt. Not about Bella, about Bronte. Because Bella was right. Bronte never lost. She never accepted being outplayed. And she sure as hell wasn't going to let Weston walk into her wedding and steal the show without consequences. Weston stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace, his hands resting against the cold steel railing as he stared out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. The air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of the city below. It should have been calming. It wasn't. His mind was tangled in thoughts of Bella. She had been right. Bronte wouldn't let this go. This wasn't just about an ex showing up at her wedding with another woman. It was about control, image, power. And if there was one thing Bronte Langford hated, it was the idea of someone else holding the upper hand. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see Bella stepping onto the terrace, wrapped in a thin cashmere shawl that draped over her shoulders. "You disappeared," she said, her voice soft, but carrying a note of quiet curiosity. Weston exhaled. "Just thinking." Bella walked closer, stopping beside him at the railing. "About your ex? Or about how this whole thing might backfire?" His lips twitched slightly. "Both." A pause. Then Bella leaned against the railing, her gaze fixed on the lights stretching beyond them. "You're playing a game with someone who doesn't like to lose. That doesn't worry you." Weston studied her. "You don't seem worried." Bella smirked. "I don't have anything to lose." That wasn't true. He could see it in the way she avoided talking about her past, the way she carried herself like someone who had been burned before. "You've been around people like Bronte before," he said. "Haven't you?" Bella tilted her head slightly, considering him. "What makes you say that?" "You read her too easily. You knew exactly how she'd react." Bella turned fully to face him now, her expression unreadable. "I know how people like her think. When you live in their world long enough, you learn that everything is about leverage. Everything is calculated." Weston held her gaze. "And yet, you don't seem afraid of her." Bella let out a quiet chuckle. "She's not the first Bronte Langford I've met, and she won't be the last." Something about the way she said it sent a spark of intrigue through him. "You've never told me how you ended up in Central Park," he said, watching her carefully. Bella's smirk faded slightly. "You never asked. I'm asking now." She inhaled slowly, looking past him as if weighing her words. "I had a life once, a good one, until I didn't." Weston stayed silent, waiting. Bella glanced down at the city below, her fingers tightening around the railing. "You ever wake up one day and realize everything you thought was solid was built on sand?" Weston's chest tightened slightly. "Yeah." Bella nodded as if that answer was enough. She didn't give him more, but she didn't need to. Whatever had happened to her had wrecked her, and she had survived it. Weston had met a lot of people in his life. Businessmen, politicians, socialites. They all had their masks, their carefully rehearsed facades. But Bella, she wasn't performing for him, she was just existing, and somehow that was more captivating than anything else. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. "Caleb." Weston sighed. "I should take this." Bella gave a small nod, stepping back. He turned away, answering the call. "Tell me you're not calling with bad news." Caleb's voice was laced with amusement. "Depends on your definition of bad. Bronte just moved up the wedding date." Weston stilled. "What?" "You heard me. It's happening in 3 days instead of next weekend. No public announcement yet, but I heard it through the grapevine." Weston clenched his jaw. Of course she did. She was trying to shake him, make sure he didn't have time to prepare. He exhaled through his nose. "What else?" "She's been asking around about Bella. I don't think she buys the story that she's just some random woman you met." Weston ran a hand down his face. "Let me guess, she's digging." Caleb let out a dry laugh. "You know her. She won't stop until she finds something she can use." Weston's grip tightened on his phone. This wasn't just a power play anymore. Bronte was trying to win. He glanced over his shoulder at Bella, who was still standing by the railing, her expression unreadable as she looked out at the city. Weston turned back, lowering his voice. "Find out how deep she's digging, and if she's planning anything for the wedding, I want to know before it happens." Caleb sighed. "You really think she'd pull something at her own wedding?" Weston's jaw tensed. "I think Bronte Langford doesn't like surprises, and I just gave her one." Caleb was silent for a moment. Then, "All right, I'll keep you updated." Weston ended the call and turned back toward Bella. She was watching him now, her eyes sharp, assessing. "That was about me, wasn't it?" Weston slid his phone into his pocket. "Bronte's looking into you." Bella smirked slightly. "Figures. Does that bother you?" Bella exhaled, rolling her shoulders slightly. "Not really." That was a lie. He could see the way her fingers curled slightly against the railing, the way her jaw tightened just a fraction. Weston stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You sure about that?" Bella met his gaze, her expression steady. "I've dealt with worse." Weston studied her for a long moment. Whatever her past was, it wasn't something she was ready to share. But if Bronte was digging, that past might not stay buried for long. And that meant Weston needed to be ready. Because if there was one thing he knew about Bronte Langford, she never made a move without a plan. And this was just the beginning. Weston paced the length of his penthouse, phone in hand, mind racing. The moment Caleb had told him Bronte was digging into Bella, something in his gut had shifted. This wasn't just about flaunting a new date at his ex's wedding anymore. It was becoming a game of control, and Bronte never played without an end goal in mind. 3 days. That's all he had before he walked into that ballroom with Bella on his arm, knowing full well Bronte would have something waiting for them. Bella sat on the couch, her legs tucked under her, idly flipping through an old business magazine she had found on the coffee table. If the news about Bronte investigating her bothered her, she wasn't showing it. "You're handling this awfully well," Weston noted, stopping beside her. Bella didn't look up. "I told you, I've dealt with worse. You don't seem the type to run." She turned a page, unfazed. "I'm not." Weston studied her for a moment. "Then what are you?" Bella smirked, finally looking at him. "A very patient woman." Weston exhaled a quiet laugh. "Patience doesn't get you off the streets." Bella's smirk faded slightly. She set the magazine down, straightening. "No, it doesn't, but knowing how to pick your battles does." There it was again, the quiet certainty that she had played this game before. Weston crossed his arms. "And what battle are you picking now?" Bella tilted her head slightly. "I don't think you've figured it out yet." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. She was impossible, completely unreadable, and for some reason, that only made him more drawn to her. His phone buzzed. Another text from Caleb. "Got something. We need to talk." Weston sighed, running a hand through his hair. He glanced at Bella. "Looks like I have to take a meeting. Want to come?" She arched a brow. "To your secret strategy session?" He smirked. "Something like that." Bella considered for a moment before rising from the couch. "Why not? Let's see what kind of mess I've gotten myself into." Weston grabbed his keys, leading her out. The restaurant Caleb had chosen was discreet, tucked away on a quiet street in Tribeca. The kind of place where high-profile deals were made behind candlelit tables, and the waitstaff knew better than to listen. Weston and Bella walked in together, and heads turned. Not because of him. People were used to seeing Weston Sterling in places like this. But Bella? She was an enigma, something no one could place. Caleb was already waiting at a booth in the back, swirling a glass of whiskey with a knowing smirk. "I was wondering if you'd bring her." Weston slid into the seat across from him, motioning for Bella to do the same. She didn't hesitate. Caleb leaned forward, eyes flicking to Bella before locking onto Weston. Bronte's working fast. Weston's jaw tightened. What do you find? Caleb pulled out his phone, sliding it across the table. Weston glanced at the screen. An article. Old, archived. The headline made his stomach clench. Hart and Vaughan firm under investigation for financial misconduct. He looked up at Bella, who had already read the words. Her face remained calm, but there was something in her eyes, something distant. Weston turned back to Caleb. Explain. Caleb sighed. 5 years ago, a law firm called Hart and Vaughan was one of the fastest growing in the city. Handled big cases, had major corporate clients. Then suddenly everything fell apart. Allegations of fraud, embezzlement, all under the name of one of the founding partners. Weston exhaled. Bella Hart. Bella sat perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Caleb continued. The firm shut down. The other partner walked away clean. But Bella, she disappeared. No one's seen or heard from her since. Weston looked at Bella, waiting for her reaction. She met his gaze and finally spoke. And now Bronte knows. Caleb nodded. She won't care if it's true or not. She just wants to use it. Weston clenched his jaw. This wasn't a game anymore. Bella exhaled, leaning back in her seat. Well, that's unfortunate. Caleb blinked. That's all you have to say? Bella smiled faintly. What do you want me to do? Panic? Weston watched her carefully. Tell me the truth. Bella's gaze flickered, but she didn't look away. I didn't do it. Weston believed her. He didn't know why, but he did. Caleb shook his head, clearly skeptical. Even if you're innocent, that won't stop Bronte. She'll dangle this in front of every guest at that wedding if she can. Bella sighed, resting her chin on her hand. Then I guess we don't give her the chance. Weston frowned. What are you suggesting? Bella smirked. We control the story before she does. Caleb let out a dry laugh. And how exactly do you plan on doing that? Bella tilted her head. People love a comeback story. They love the idea of someone losing everything and rising from the ashes. If Bronte wants to paint me as some disgraced lawyer who ran fine, let's give them a different version. Weston arched a brow. And what version is that? Bella's smirk widened. That I didn't disappear. I chose to walk away. Caleb looked skeptical. You think people will believe that? Bella's eyes gleamed with something sharp, something almost dangerous. They will when we make them. Weston stared at her, realization dawning. She wasn't just playing defense. She was ready to go on the offensive. And suddenly, this wasn't just about Bronte anymore. This was about something much bigger. Weston sat in the back seat of his car, fingers drumming against his knee as the city blurred past the tinted windows. The conversation at dinner had changed everything. This wasn't just about Bronte's wedding anymore. It wasn't even about proving a point. It was about Bella. He glanced to his right, where she sat, legs crossed, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the seat. She hadn't spoken much since they left the restaurant, but she didn't seem shaken. If anything, she seemed amused. He studied her profile, the way the neon lights outside flickered across her face. You're really not worried about this? Bella turned her head slightly, giving him a slow smile. Would it change anything if I was? Weston exhaled, shaking his head. You're impossible. I prefer adaptable. He ran a hand through his hair, letting out a quiet chuckle. So, let me get this straight. Your plan to counter Bronte is to spin your own story before she can. Bella nodded. People love a narrative, and right now I have none. That makes me dangerous. Weston arched a brow. You're enjoying this? Bella smirked. I enjoy control. He didn't doubt it, but there was something else there, something beneath the confidence, a flicker of something unspoken. He leaned back against the seat, watching her. Tell me why you really walked away from that world. Bella's smirk didn't fade, but her gaze shifted, just slightly. Why does it matter? Because Bronte isn't just looking for a way to embarrass you. She's looking for a way to destroy you. Bella exhaled, her fingers tapping lightly against her knee. She stared out the window, watching the city fly by. Then, softly, she said, I trusted the wrong person. Weston stayed silent, letting her continue. I built a career, a name. I worked harder than anyone else in my field, made the right connections, played the game the way I was supposed to. She let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. And then, one day, it was all gone. Weston frowned. Because of your partner? Bella's lips pressed together before she nodded. Vaughn was smart, calculated. He made sure that when the firm collapsed, I took the fall and he walked away untouched. Weston's jaw tightened. And no one questioned it. Bella turned back to him, her expression unreadable. People don't question what they're told if the story is convincing enough. He exhaled slowly, absorbing her words. You could have fought it. Bella tilted her head and spent the next decade buried in legal battles, losing every penny I had, watching people whisper behind my back, waiting for me to fail even more than I already had. She shook her head. I chose the only option that let me keep my dignity. I walked away. Weston studied her, something twisting in his chest. She had been alone in all of this. Why didn't you start over? He asked. Bella smirked faintly. You think the world lets you start over after something like that? Weston exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. He understood now. Bronte wasn't just exposing a past scandal. She was digging up the very thing that had destroyed Bella's life. Bella sighed, shifting slightly in her seat. The funny thing is, I didn't even care at first. Let people think what they wanted. But now, she turned to him, her eyes dark. Now, I do. Weston met her gaze, something in her tone sending a slow burn through his chest. He didn't know what this was anymore. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let Bronte win. The car slowed as they reached his building, the valet already stepping forward. Weston opened the door, stepping out first, then turned as Bella slid out behind him. She adjusted her coat, glancing up at the penthouse towering above them. You ready for this? Weston smirked. The real question is, are you? Bella met his gaze, and for the first time, her smile wasn't calculated. It was real. Let's find out. Weston sat in his office, staring at the city skyline through the wide glass windows, but his mind was elsewhere. The weight of the conversation from the night before still lingered. Bella's past, the quiet steel in her voice when she spoke of Vaughn, the way she carried herself, not as someone broken, but as someone who had chosen to disappear. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more. The fact that she had once built a life as powerful as his own, or the fact that she had walked away from it. His phone buzzed on the desk, snapping him back to reality. Caleb, Weston picked up. Tell me you have something useful. Caleb's voice was sharp. You're not going to like it. Weston exhaled, leaning back in his chair. That's becoming a pattern. Bronte's ramping things up. She's not just digging into Bella. She's pulling strings to make sure people are talking about her before the wedding even happens. Weston frowned. What kind of talking? The kind that paints her as a scandal waiting to happen, Caleb said. Rumors are already circulating in high society circles. Some of Bronte's friends are starting to ask questions about why you're bringing a woman with a, let's say, unclear past to the biggest event of the year. Weston's jaw tightened. And how do we shut that down? Caleb sighed. Right now, we don't. You know how this works. The more you deny it, the more it looks like there's something to cover up. Weston gritted his teeth. So what? We just let Bronte run her mouth. Not exactly, Caleb said. But I hope you and Bella are ready to be the center of attention. Because this wedding, it just turned into a battlefield. Weston's grip on his phone tightened. Bronte was playing dirty, and they both knew it. This wasn't just about humiliating him. It was about making sure Bella never recovered. Find out everything you can, Weston said. I don't want any surprises. Caleb hesitated. Are you sure about this, man? Because once you step into that ballroom with her, there's no going back. Weston glanced at the door to his office, where Bella had just walked in. Her gaze met his, steady and unshaken, like she already knew what was coming. Yeah, Weston said, his voice firm. I'm sure. He ended the call and set the phone down. Bella crossed the room, her steps slow and deliberate. Bad news. Weston leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. Bronte's not waiting until the wedding. She's already spreading rumors about you. Bella exhaled, but her expression remained unreadable. Let me guess. Scandalous woman with a past. Questionable intentions. Weston Sterling's newest mistake. Something like that, Weston admitted. Bella smirked slightly, shaking her head. Predictable. Weston studied her. It doesn't bother you? She shrugged. People love a good story, and right now, I'm the most interesting one they've got. Weston's lips pressed into a thin line. This isn't a joke, Bella. Bronte isn't just trying to embarrass you. She's trying to erase you. Bella walked around his desk, resting a hand against the polished wood. Then I guess we should give them something else to talk about. Weston narrowed his eyes. Meaning, Bella said. If Bronte wants to paint me as a problem, let's make sure I'm a very interesting one. Weston smirked, despite himself. You really don't like losing, do you? Bella's gaze flickered with something sharp. I don't play games I can't win. Weston exhaled, standing up. All right, if you want to fight, let's fight. But you should know something. Bella tilted her head. What's that? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Bronte doesn't just go after reputation. She goes after weaknesses. And if she thinks she's found yours, she won't stop. Bella held his gaze unshaken. Let her try. Weston studied her for a long moment. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She knew exactly what she was walking into, and that made her dangerous. He grabbed his suit jacket from the chair, slipping it on. Come on. Bella arched a brow. Where are we going? Weston smirked. To introduce you to the city properly. The event was one of those exclusive, invite-only affairs where New York's elite gathered to sip champagne, exchange carefully crafted pleasantries, and judge everyone in the room. A charity gala, one of the last big social events before Bronte's wedding. Weston knew exactly what he was doing. If Bronte wanted to control the conversation, he and Bella were about to rewrite the narrative. As they stepped inside the grand ballroom, all eyes turned to them. Bella, dressed in a midnight blue gown that hugged her frame perfectly, walked beside him with the kind of effortless confidence that made people whisper. The contrast was striking. Weston Sterling, the billionaire businessman with his reputation polished to perfection, and Bella Hart, the woman no one could quite figure out. The moment they entered, the whispers began. That's her. Isn't she the one? Weston Sterling never brings dates, let alone her. Bella leaned in slightly, just enough for Weston to hear. I think they like me. Weston smirked. They don't know what to do with you. They walked through the crowd, past groups of well-dressed men and women who were trying to act like they weren't staring. Weston wasn't interested in their opinions. He was looking for one person in particular. And then he spotted her. Bronte. She stood across the room, champagne glass in hand, wearing a dress that was undoubtedly chosen to make a statement. When her gaze locked onto them, her lips curled into the faintest smile. Weston felt Bella's fingers graze against his palm, barely noticeable, but enough for him to know she had seen her too. "Showtime," Bella murmured. Weston's grip on her hand tightened slightly, just for a second. "Let's give them something to talk about." The moment Weston and Bella stepped deeper into the gala, the energy in the room shifted. The murmurs weren't just whispers anymore. They were growing waves of speculation, curiosity, and envy. Bella felt the weight of 100 stares pressing against her, waiting, assessing, judging. But she didn't falter. She stood beside Weston, her posture effortlessly poised, the midnight blue gown flowing elegantly around her, as if it had always belonged to her. And maybe, once upon a time, it had. Weston's grip on her waist was subtle, but firm, a silent assurance as they moved through the crowd. He wasn't tense, but he wasn't relaxed either. He was watching, calculating, and she knew exactly why. Bronte. The woman was an expert at controlling a room, and tonight was no exception. She stood near the grand bar, surrounded by New York's elite, her golden gown shimmering under the chandelier's glow. She didn't move toward them, didn't react immediately. Instead, she lifted her champagne glass with that slow, knowing smirk. One that spoke volumes without saying a word. She had been waiting for them. Bella leaned in slightly, just enough for Weston to hear. "She wants us to come to her." Weston smirked. "Then let's make her wait." They continued through the room, pausing to greet a few of Weston's acquaintances. Each introduction was met with curiosity. Who was Bella Hart? Some assumed she was a rising socialite. Others thought she was an unknown heiress. No one quite knew where she'd come from, and Bella let them wonder. She played the game masterfully, answering questions without revealing anything. When asked about her background, she simply smiled. "Weston and I met under unconventional circumstances," she said once, her tone dripping with intrigue. "You must have an incredible story," a woman in a red dress commented, eyes flicking between her and Weston. Bella's lips curled into a soft, knowing smile. "Ah, I do." Weston, standing beside her, chuckled under his breath. He wasn't sure if she was enjoying herself or if this was her way of reclaiming control, but either way, she was winning. Finally, the inevitable happened. Bronte moved. She made her way across the room, her presence commanding, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The conversations around them quieted, like people were bracing for impact. Bella felt Weston's arm tighten slightly around her waist, a silent cue to be ready. Then, Bronte was there. "Weston," she purred, her voice as smooth as ever. What a surprise. Weston turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Bronte." Her eyes flickered toward Bella, taking in the dress, the confidence, the undeniable presence that made it impossible to ignore her. Bronte's smile didn't falter, but there was something sharp behind it. "And you must be Bella," Bronte said, her tone polite, but laced with something heavier. Bella tilted her head slightly, offering a soft smile. "It's lovely to meet you, Bronte. I've heard so much about you." Bronte let out a light laugh, the kind designed to make everyone around her feel like they were standing on uneven ground. "I can imagine. It's not every day that Weston brings a date to one of these events." Bella met her gaze, unwavering. "No, I suppose it isn't." There was a beat of silence. Then Bronte turned her attention back to Weston, as if Bella had already been dismissed. "James and I were wondering if you'd be at the wedding," she said smoothly. "I wasn't sure if you'd come, given, well..." She let the sentence hang, her eyes gleaming with unspoken meaning. Weston didn't react. "Wouldn't miss it." Bronte smiled. "Wonderful. We always did have a way of keeping things interesting, didn't we?" Bella watched the exchange carefully. Bronte wasn't just trying to intimidate her. She was testing Weston, pushing buttons, seeing how far she could go. Bella placed a hand gently on Weston's arm, her touch light but intentional. "I have to say, Bronte, I love the way you handle yourself," she said, her voice smooth as silk. Bronte's smile stiffened just a fraction. "Oh," Bella nodded. "You carry yourself with such conviction. It's admirable. I imagine it must take a great deal of effort to keep everything so perfectly under control." A flicker of something passed through Bronte's expression, so quick most people wouldn't have noticed. But Bella did. Weston smirked. Bella has a way of seeing things others don't. Bronte's gaze flicked to him, and for the first time that night, something in her demeanor shifted. A crack in the perfect mask. It lasted only a moment, but it was there. Then she smiled again, all charm and poise. "Well, I do hope you enjoy the rest of the evening," she said, her voice light. "We'll have so much to talk about at the wedding." Bella didn't look away. "I'm counting on it." Bronte gave a small nod, then turned, walking back toward the crowd. The second she was out of earshot, Weston exhaled softly. Bella raised a brow. "What was that?" Weston chuckled, shaking his head. "That was Bronte realizing she's not the smartest person in the room tonight." Bella smirked. "She'll try harder next time." Weston met her gaze. "I know." Bella studied him for a moment, then took a sip of the champagne she had barely touched. "She's not going to let this go, Weston." "I don't expect her to." Bella tilted her head. "Then what do you expect?" Weston's gaze darkened slightly. "A storm." Bella watched him carefully, then set her glass down. "Good thing I don't mind getting wet." He laughed under his breath, shaking his head. She was impossible. Impossible and completely in control. And in that moment he realized something. This wasn't just about Bronte anymore. It never had been. Weston stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace. The city stretched out beneath him in glittering gold and silver. The gala was still in full swing below, but he needed a moment away from the noise, from the carefully crafted smiles, from Bronte's venom disguised as charm, and from Bella. She was the problem he hadn't anticipated. Not in the way Bronte was, a calculated adversary, predictable in her strategies. No, Bella was an entirely different kind of challenge. She was unreadable, effortless in a way that made her impossible to ignore. And worse, he was starting to care. The sound of approaching footsteps broke his thoughts. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. "You left the party early," Bella said, stepping beside him. "You followed me." She smirked. "I was curious." Weston exhaled, staring down at the streets below. "Bronte's planning something. You know that, right?" Bella folded her arms, the wind catching the edge of her gown. "Of course. But that's not why you're up here." Weston finally turned to look at her. She wasn't watching the city. She was watching him. "You don't like feeling out of control," she said, her voice softer than usual, but just as sharp. Weston let out a dry chuckle. "You say that like you do." Bella tilted her head slightly, considering. "No one really likes it. Some of us just get used to it." A pause. Then Weston asked, "Is that why you walked away from your life?" Bella's smirk faded, but she didn't look away. "I didn't walk away. I was forced out." Weston watched her carefully. "By Vaughn." Bella's fingers curled against the railing. "By the world he built. By the people who believed him. By the ones who stood back and let it happen." Weston studied her, waiting. He could see the hesitation, the choice she was making in real time, whether to let him in or keep him at a distance. Bella exhaled. "Vaughn didn't just take my career. He took my name, my credibility. He made sure that when I left, I had nothing to return to." Weston's jaw tightened. "And Bronte's trying to bring it all back." Bella nodded. "The problem with ghosts is that people love to dig them up." Weston leaned against the railing, crossing his arms. "Then we don't let her." Bella let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. You say that like it's a choice. It is, Weston said simply. We rewrite the story before she gets a chance to. Bella looked at him, really looked at him, something flickering in her expression. You don't even know the whole story. Weston held her gaze. I know enough. She let out a slow breath. Why do you care? Weston didn't answer right away. He didn't know how to. He could tell her that this had started as a game, a way to get back at Bronte, a way to win. He could tell her that she had been nothing more than a strategic move at first, but it wouldn't be the truth anymore. Instead, he said, because you deserve better than this. Bella's lips parted slightly, as if she hadn't expected that answer. Weston took a step closer, lowering his voice. I don't care who you were before. I care about who you are now. And right now, you're with me. So if Bronte wants to come after you, she has to go through me first. Bella exhaled, looking away for the first time. You can't protect me from this, Weston. Watch me, he said, his voice steady. She turned back, and for a brief moment, something softened in her gaze, like she wanted to believe him. Then, the moment shattered. The terrace door opened behind them. Well, isn't this intimate? Weston didn't have to turn to recognize the voice. Bronte. Bella's expression shifted in an instant, the softness vanishing, the mask slipping back into place. Weston turned, watching as Bronte stepped onto the terrace, her golden gown shimmering under the city lights. Her smirk was casual, but her eyes gleamed with something sharper. You always did have a habit of sneaking off to rooftops, Bronte said, tilting her head at Weston. I suppose old habits die hard. Weston kept his expression unreadable. Something you needed, Bronte. Bronte took a slow step forward, glancing between them. Oh, nothing urgent. I just couldn't help but notice the two of you slipping away, and I hate missing interesting conversations. Bella smiled, her expression easy. Don't worry, we were just discussing the weather. Bronte let out a light laugh. You are delightful. No wonder Weston brought you. Bella arched a brow. Is that jealousy I hear? Bronte smirked. Oh, darling, if I were the jealous type, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Weston stepped slightly in front of Bella, his patience thinning. Say what you came to say, Bronte. Bronte tilted her head, her gaze flickering to Bella. Just a friendly warning. The people in that room, they love a good story. And right now, yours is the most interesting one they've heard in a long time. Bella smiled, unbothered. Then I guess I should make it a good one. Bronte's expression flickered for just a second. Weston stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Whatever you're planning, Bronte, don't. Bronte's smile widened. Oh, Weston, when have I ever been able to resist? And with that, she turned, disappearing back inside. Bella exhaled slowly. Weston clenched his jaw. She's not done. Bella glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. Neither are we. And for the first time since this started, Weston realized something. They weren't just trying to outmaneuver Bronte anymore. They were fighting for something much bigger. Weston sat in the dimly lit lounge of his penthouse, fingers loosely wrapped around a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. The city stretched beyond the windows, its glow relentless, but his mind was anywhere but the skyline. Bronte had made her move. That much was clear. The problem was, he still didn't know exactly what it was. And that bothered him. Across from him, Bella sat perched on the arm of the couch, one leg crossed over the other, absently twirling the stem of her wineglass between her fingers. If she was worried about what Bronte had planned, she didn't show it. You're quiet, Weston said, watching her. Bella's lips curved slightly. So are you. Weston leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You should be concerned. Bella tilted her head. Am I supposed to panic? number. But Bronte isn't just playing anymore. She's setting the stage for something. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. And I don't like waiting to find out what. Bella studied him, then took a slow sip of her wine. You don't like waiting for anything, do you? Weston smirked faintly. But it didn't last. Not when I know the person I'm up against. Bella set her glass down on the table between them. Bronte doesn't want me gone, Weston. That would be too easy. His gaze sharpened. Then what does she want? Bella met his eyes, something flickering behind her expression. She wants me humiliated. Weston exhaled sharply, his grip tightening around his glass. That's not happening. Bella smirked slightly, shaking her head. It's not your reputation on the line. Doesn't matter, Weston said. You think I'm just going to let her destroy you? Bella studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, I think I'm not used to people fighting for me. Weston stilled. The words hit somewhere deep, somewhere unexpected. Then, before he could respond, his phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, glancing at the screen. Caleb. Weston answered immediately. Tell me you have something. Caleb's voice was clipped. I do, but you're not going to like it. Weston leaned back, bracing himself. What did she do? She's orchestrating a leak, Caleb said. And I don't mean whispers at a party. She's feeding the media something big, my guess. Something connected to Bella's past. Bella's jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't look away. Weston clenched his jaw. How soon? Caleb sighed. I'd say by tomorrow morning, there'll be an article circulating. Maybe more. Weston's grip tightened around his phone. What's the angle? Professional scandal, most likely. Bronte wants the world to believe you're parading around with a woman who, let's just say, doesn't belong at your level. Weston exhaled through his nose. Find out where it's coming from. I'm already on it, Caleb said. But you need to be ready. This is going to hit fast. Weston glanced at Bella, who was watching him carefully, waiting. I'll call you back, Weston muttered before ending the call. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Bella exhaled, almost amused. Well, that didn't take long. Weston set his phone down. We'll shut it down. Bella smirked. You think I haven't been through this before? Weston narrowed his eyes. You shouldn't have to go through it again. Bella leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. Let's say we can't stop it. What happens then? Weston's gaze darkened. Then we make sure Bronte regrets it. Bella tilted her head slightly, considering. And how do you plan on doing that? Weston exhaled, the beginning of a dangerous smirk forming. We don't play defense. We go on the offensive. Bella arched a brow. And what exactly does that look like? Weston stood, grabbing his phone again. You said people love a good story, right? Bella nodded slowly. Then let's give them one, Weston said. Bella studied him, then smirked. This should be fun. Weston met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. It wasn't just about Bronte anymore. It never had been. The morning came like a tidal wave. Weston stood in his penthouse, his phone vibrating non-stop on the kitchen counter. Every major media outlet had picked up the story, and it was exactly as Caleb predicted. Weston Sterling's mystery woman, a fallen lawyer with a dark past. Is Weston Sterling's new flame a scandal waiting to happen? Billionaire romances a woman who walked away from her career in disgrace. The headlines varied, but the message was the same. Bella wasn't a rising socialite or a high-profile businesswoman. She was a scandal. A woman whose name had been buried in disgrace, now dragged back into the light for the world to dissect. Weston clenched his jaw as he scrolled through the articles. Bronte had played her move perfectly. She hadn't fabricated lies. She hadn't needed to. She had simply resurfaced the truth, twisting it just enough to turn it into a spectacle. And now, everyone was watching. From across the room, Bella stood at the window, coffee in hand, her expression unreadable. She had seen the headlines. She hadn't needed to ask. But she hadn't reacted. That bothered him more than anything. Weston picked up his phone and dialed Caleb. The second his friend answered, he didn't waste time. "How bad is it?" Weston asked. Caleb sighed. "On a scale of 1 to Bronte-level disaster, it's a solid 9. Weston rubbed his temple. "Tell me something I don't know." "Well, the good news is, no one's calling for your downfall yet. Most of the headlines are framing this as your problem, that you're reckless, that you don't care about reputation." Weston smirked darkly. "Then they don't know me very well." Caleb chuckled. "True, but Bella, that's a different story. They're already picking apart her past. There are theories, Weston. Some people think she's a gold digger. Others think she was waiting for the right billionaire to rebrand herself." Weston's grip tightened on his phone. "And what's Bronte doing?" Caleb exhaled. "Sitting back and watching. She doesn't need to say anything. The damage is already done." Weston glanced at Bella again. Still calm. Still unreadable. "Let me call you back." He hung up and set his phone down. Bella took a slow sip of her coffee before finally turning to face him. "So what's the verdict? Am I officially your biggest mistake?" Weston leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "You don't care, do you?" Bella arched a brow. "Should I?" He narrowed his eyes. "Bella." She exhaled, setting her mug down. "What do you want me to say, Weston?" "That I didn't expect this. That I thought people would be kind." A short, humorless laugh escaped her lips. "I've already lived through this once. The first time, I lost everything. This," she gestured vaguely toward his phone, "this is nothing new." Weston studied her, something twisting in his chest. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Bella's lips pressed together for a brief moment. "And what does that mean exactly? That you're going to fix this for me?" Weston pushed off the counter, stepping closer. "That means we fix it. Together." Bella let out a slow breath, shaking her head. "You think this is something you can just outmaneuver? That we can spin a better narrative?" "Yes," Weston said, without hesitation. Bella's gaze searched his, something flickering behind her expression. Doubt, maybe even something close to hope. But she didn't answer right away. Weston took another step closer. "You said it yourself. People love a good story, so let's give them one." Bella let out a quiet scoff. "And what story do you suggest? The misunderstood billionaire and the disgraced lawyer find redemption in each other." Weston smirked. "Not bad, but not quite." Bella crossed her arms. "Then what?" Weston's voice was steady. "We show them the truth. That you didn't run from your past. You rose from it. That you're not a scandal. You're a comeback story." Bella exhaled slowly, tilting her head. "And how do we do that?" Weston's gaze locked onto hers. "We make the wedding about you." Bella blinked. "Come again." Weston's smirk widened slightly. "Bronte wants to control the conversation. She wants everyone looking at her. So let's make sure that when we walk into that ballroom, no one is talking about her wedding." Bella watched him carefully. "And what are they talking about?" Weston didn't hesitate. "Us." A long pause. Bella's lips parted slightly, as if she were about to protest, but then she stopped herself. For the first time since this started, Weston saw something shift in her expression. A flicker of something dangerous. Then, slowly, she smirked. "You really don't like losing, do you?" Weston smirked back. "Neither do you." Bella exhaled, shaking her head. "This is ridiculous." "Maybe." Bella bit her lip, considering. "You really think we can pull this off?" Weston tilted his head. "I think Bronte's been playing this game too long. She's gotten comfortable. She doesn't expect us to hit back." Bella studied him for a moment, then ran a hand through her hair. Finally, she exhaled. All right, Weston. Let's burn the whole thing down. Weston's smirk turned into something sharper. Now that's the spirit. Bella picked up her coffee again, taking a slow sip. So, where do we start? Weston picked up his phone. We start by making sure the world is watching. The city pulsed beneath them, a blur of lights and movement. But inside Weston's penthouse, time seemed to slow. Bella sat across from him at the sleek marble dining table, her fingers absently tracing the rim of her coffee cup. He had laid out the plan, precise, strategic, ruthless in its elegance. Bronte had drawn first blood, but she had made a crucial mistake. She underestimated them. Bella exhaled, shaking her head slightly. You're really betting that we can flip the narrative in 48 hours? Weston smirked. Not betting, making sure. She narrowed her eyes. You're disturbingly confident. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Because I know how these people think. They don't actually care about the truth. They care about perception. Bella's lips pressed together in thought. And we're giving them a new one. Exactly. She let out a quiet chuckle. I'm starting to think you enjoy this more than you should. Weston's smirk didn't fade. Let's just say I don't like being played. Bella studied him, something unreadable flickering in her gaze. All right, Sterling. Walk me through it. Weston stood, grabbing the remote control from the table and turning on the massive flat screen against the wall. Within seconds, multiple social media pages and headlines filled the screen. Gossip accounts, business insiders, high-profile commentators, all dissecting the same thing. Who is Bella Hart? Weston Sterling's mysterious date raises questions. Scandal or redemption story? The internet weighs in. Bella exhaled. So it's everywhere now. Weston nodded. Which means we have their attention. Now we take control. He tapped another button and a new image popped up. A mock-up of a feature article with her face front and center. The headline was bold, clean, impossible to ignore. A woman reborn, Bella Hart, steps back into the light. Bella blinked. You want me to give an interview? Weston leaned against the counter. Not just an interview, a controlled narrative. We choose the journalist, we set the terms. No one gets to define you but you. Bella exhaled, leaning back in her chair. And you really think that will work? Weston held her gaze. I think the world loves a comeback story. Bella didn't answer immediately. Her fingers drummed lightly against the table. You know, the last time I let the media tell my story, it nearly ruined me. Weston's voice softened, but his certainty didn't waver. This time, you're in control. Bella's eyes flickered with something. Hesitation, maybe, but also something deeper. Something closer to trust. Finally, she exhaled. Fine, let's do it. Weston's smirk returned. Good choice. Bella gave him a dry look. Don't get smug. Too late. She rolled her eyes, but there was amusement in them. Weston picked up his phone, dialing a number without hesitation. Within seconds, a voice answered. Caleb, Weston said smoothly. Find me the best journalist in the city. Someone credible, someone untouchable. Caleb let out a low whistle. You're really leaning into this, huh? Time's running out. Bronte's controlling the conversation, and we need to take it back. Caleb exhaled. All right, I'll make some calls. But Weston, this is risky. Weston's eyes flickered to Bella. So is doing nothing. Caleb was silent for a beat, then said, I'll call you back. Weston hung up, setting the phone down. Bella arched a brow. And just like that, we're rewriting history. Weston smirked. Just like that. Bella exhaled, leaning back slightly. You make it sound easy. It's not. She studied him for a long moment. And what if it doesn't work? Weston held her gaze, his expression unwavering. Then we burn it all down and build something better. Bella let out a soft laugh. shaking her head. You really don't like losing. Weston tilted his head. Neither do you. A pause. Then Bella smiled. Slow and deliberate. Fine, Sterling. Let's give them something to talk about. Weston smirked. Now that's the spirit. The next morning, the world woke up to an exclusive feature. Bella Hart speaks out. The truth behind the headlines. The article was sharp, intentional. It didn't ignore her past. It confronted it head-on. I didn't disappear. I chose to walk away. And now, I'm choosing to return on my terms. By noon, the internet had shifted. The speculation turned into fascination. The doubt into intrigue. Weston scrolled through the responses, smirking. Told you. Bella sat beside him on the couch, arms crossed, watching the screen. We're not done yet. Weston chuckled. Number. But we just changed the game. Bella glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. Then quietly she said, Thank you. Weston's smirk softened, just slightly. Anytime. And for the first time, it wasn't about Bronte anymore. It was about them. The city buzzed with new energy. For the first time since Bronte's calculated attack, the tide was shifting. Bella wasn't just a mystery anymore. She was a story people wanted to understand. And more importantly, she was no longer a scandal. She was a woman who had been wronged and was now reclaiming her name. Weston leaned back on the leather couch in his penthouse, watching as his phone vibrated with non-stop notifications. The article had worked, public perception was changing, and the media was eating it up. Bella, however, stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the skyline like she was waiting for something else to drop. You're quiet, Weston noted. Bella exhaled. It worked. I should be relieved. But, she turned to him, her expression unreadable. You really think Bronte is just going to let this go? Weston smirked. Number. But now she knows we're not playing defense anymore. Bella shook her head slightly. That doesn't make her any less dangerous. He studied her carefully. What are you afraid of? Bella hesitated. Then, softly, she said, I know Bronte. Women like her don't take losses lightly. She'll find a way to turn this back on me. She'll use the wedding as a stage. Weston's smirk faded. Let her try. Bella let out a dry laugh. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Weston stood, walking toward her. We've controlled the narrative, Bella. We've set the stage. Now, we just have to own it. Bella held his gaze, something flickering in her eyes. You really trust me that much? Weston didn't hesitate. Yes. Bella exhaled, shaking her head slightly. That's dangerous. Weston smirked. So are you. A moment passed between them, charged and unspoken. Then Bella turned back toward the window. So, she murmured, what's our next move? Weston crossed his arms. We make sure that when we walk into that wedding, every single person in that room is looking at us. Bella arched a brow. You have a plan. Weston's smirk widened. Oh, I always have a plan. Bella exhaled, shaking her head in amusement. Why am I not surprised? Because you're starting to understand how my mind works. Bella turned to him again, this time with something softer in her expression. And what exactly is your plan, Sterling? Weston leaned in slightly. We make sure Bronte realizes she's already lost before the wedding even starts. Bella tilted her head. And how do we do that? Weston's smirk deepened. By giving her exactly what she doesn't want. Bella studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smirk of her own appeared. You know, she murmured, I think I like the way your mind works. Weston chuckled. Careful, Hart. You might just start trusting me. Bella exhaled, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. Then, softly, she said, Maybe I already do. And for the first time, Weston realized this wasn't just about Bronte anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. The day before the wedding arrived like the calm before a storm. Weston sat at the head of the long conference table in his office, fingers drumming against the sleek mahogany surface. The city stretched beyond the glass windows, but his mind was focused on one thing. Bronte hadn't made a move. Not yet, and that was the problem. Bella sat across from him, flipping through an old magazine, like she didn't have a care in the world. But he knew better. He could see it in the way she occasionally glanced at her phone, the way she stretched her fingers like she was bracing for impact. "She's too quiet," Weston muttered. Bella didn't look up. "She's waiting." "For what?" Bella exhaled, finally closing the magazine. "For the moment that stings the most." Weston narrowed his eyes. "She thinks she still has a way to win." Bella smirked. "Oh, she knows she does." Weston leaned forward. "Then we take that away from her." Bella arched a brow. "You already have a plan, don't you?" Weston tilted his head. "I always have a plan." Bella chuckled, shaking her head. "You really don't like leaving anything to chance." Weston smirked. "Not when I can help it." Before Bella could respond, his phone buzzed on the table. Weston grabbed it, glancing at the screen. "Caleb." He answered immediately. "Tell me you have something." Caleb's voice was sharp. "She's holding a private meeting at the Langford estate tonight. High-profile guests, a select group." Weston frowned. "What kind of meeting?" Caleb exhaled. "One where she makes sure everyone remembers exactly who Bella Hart used to be." Weston clenched his jaw. Bella didn't react. "She's feeding them the last piece," Caleb continued. "Something she's been keeping until the perfect moment." Weston's grip tightened on the phone. "Then we make sure it isn't perfect." Caleb hesitated. "What are you thinking?" Weston glanced at Bella, then back out the window. "We crash the meeting." Bella finally looked up, arching a brow. "We?" Weston smirked. "Ah, Hart, you didn't think I was going to let you have all the fun, did you?" Bella exhaled, shaking her head. "This is a terrible idea." Weston grinned. "Probably." Bella studied him, then stood. "Fine, let's make it their problem." Weston's smirk widened. "Now, that's the spirit." The Langford estate was built to impress. The mansion loomed at the top of a private hill, glowing under the soft amber lights that lined the entrance. Luxury cars were parked in neat rows, high-profile guests moving through the grand doors like they belonged to something untouchable. Weston and Bella stepped out of the car, dressed for the occasion. Bella's gown was sleek, dangerously elegant, midnight blue just like the one she had worn to the gala. Weston, in a sharp black suit, exuded the same effortless dominance that had made him one of the most powerful men in New York. But tonight wasn't about power. Tonight was about making a statement. Bella looped her arm through his as they walked up the step. "Are we really doing this?" Weston smirked. "Too late to back out now." Bella chuckled under her breath. "You're impossible. And yet, you're still here." Before she could respond, the grand doors opened, and they stepped inside. The room went still. Bronte stood at the far end of the ballroom, surrounded by guests sipping champagne and murmuring behind their glasses. But when she saw them, her smile faltered. Just for a second. Then, just as quickly, she recovered. "Well," Bronte drawled, stepping forward with a slow, deliberate grace. "If this isn't the most unexpected surprise of the evening." Weston smirked. "Didn't want you having all the fun without us." Bronte tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "You always did have a way of ruining a perfectly curated moment." Bella smiled, her voice smooth. "Oh, I don't know. I think we just made it better." Bronte's gaze flickered, sharp and assessing. Then, slowly, she smirked. "I have to admit, Bella," she mused, "I admire your confidence. Walking into a room full of people who know exactly who you are. Bold. Bella didn't flinch. I prefer unapologetic. Bronte chuckled softly. Is that what we're calling it now? Weston stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. Let's cut the theatrics, Bronte. We both know why we're here. Bronte arched a brow. Do we? Weston's smirk faded slightly. You're about to hand them something. The final piece. Bronte exhaled, shaking her head slightly. Weston, you make it sound so cruel. I'm simply clarifying things. Bella tilted her head. And what exactly needs clarifying? Bronte's eyes gleamed. The part where you never really left the game, Bella. You just changed how you played it. Weston clenched his jaw. Bella's smile didn't waver. And what exactly do you think you know? Bronte took a slow sip of her champagne, then gestured toward the crowd. Oh, I don't think. I know. Then, as if on cue, a hush fell over the room. A man stepped forward. Older, distinguished, sharp eyes, and a perfectly tailored suit. Weston's chest tightened the moment he recognized him. Vaughn Lancaster, the man who had destroyed Bella's career. The air in the room changed. The guests leaned in, sensing the shift. Bella's fingers curled slightly at her sides, but her expression didn't break. Vaughn smiled, slow and deliberate. Bella Hart. Bella exhaled softly. Vaughn. Bronte smirked, stepping to the side. Now, this should be interesting. Weston clenched his jaw. Bella's past had just walked into the room, and Bronte wasn't just watching the storm anymore. She had just started it. The silence in the room was suffocating. Bella stood face to face with Vaughn Lancaster, the man who had once orchestrated her downfall, his smile cold and knowing. Around them, the elite of New York society watched with rapt attention, the air thick with anticipation. Weston felt the slow burn of anger in his chest, but he didn't move. Not yet. This wasn't his moment. It was hers. Vaughn's voice was smooth, practiced, dangerous. It's been a long time, Bella. I was starting to think you'd disappeared for good. Bella's expression didn't waver. You never were very good at recognizing what you couldn't control. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Bronte smirked from her spot by the bar, sipping her champagne like she had orchestrated the moment perfectly. Vaughn chuckled, tilting his head. Still sharp, I see. Though I have to admit, I'm surprised to see you standing here, in this crowd, after everything. Bella arched a brow. After everything you did, you mean? Vaughn gave a slow, deliberate smile. Is that what we're calling it? Weston clenched his jaw. He had spent years playing in the same circles as men like Vaughn. Men who built power through whispered threats and well-timed manipulations. But Bella, she had been alone when Vaughn came after her, not anymore. Weston stepped forward, his voice cool. You talk a lot for someone who should be worried about his own reputation. Vaughn's gaze flicked to Weston, amusement glinting in his eyes. And here I was wondering what all the fuss was about. The great Weston Sterling, playing the White Knight. Weston smirked. You give yourself too much credit. You're not worth saving her from. A flicker of something passed through Vaughn's eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, but he didn't let it show. Instead, he turned back to Bella. The press has certainly had a field day with your return, Vaughn mused. Though I have to wonder, how long before they start asking the real questions? Bella tilted her head. Let me guess, your version of those questions? Vaughn exhaled, as if disappointed. Come now, Bella. Do you really think people forget? Scandal fades, yes, but it never truly disappears. And now that you've stepped back into the light, you're giving everyone a reason to remember. Bella didn't blink. Good. Let them remember. A hush fell over the room. Vaughn's smirk faltered. Bella took a slow step forward, her voice steady. Let them remember that I built something from nothing, that I worked twice as hard, played by your rules, and still won. until you made sure I lost. Let them remember that the only reason I fell was because you were afraid of what I could become." Weston's chest tightened. She wasn't just fighting Vaughn. She was taking her power back. Bella let out a slow breath. "I spent years wondering what I'd do if I ever saw you again. If I'd fight, if I tried to clear my name. But now," she smiled, and it was real this time. "Now, I realize I don't need to. Because you don't matter anymore, Vaughn. You never did." Vaughn's expression darkened. The crowd murmured. Bella exhaled, stepping back. "Enjoy your evening." And just like that, she turned away. Weston followed her, ignoring the way Bronte's smirk had vanished, ignoring the way Vaughn stood frozen in place. Bella walked out of the ballroom without looking back. Weston reached for her hand the moment they stepped into the cool night air. "You all right?" Bella exhaled. "I think I am." Weston studied her carefully. "You sure?" Bella turned to face him, something lighter in her expression. "I spent so long thinking I needed revenge, that I needed to win against them." She paused, then let out a soft laugh. "But I already have, haven't I?" Weston smirked. "Yeah, you have." Bella shook her head, exhaling. "God, that was insanely reckless." Bella laughed. "I was going to say cathartic, but sure." Weston chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "You really are impossible." Bella's smile softened. "And yet, you're still here." Weston's smirk faded slightly. He looked at her then, really looked at her. She was free now. From Bronte, from Vaughn, from the ghosts of her past, which meant there was only one question left. "What happens now?" Weston asked. Bella hesitated, the weight of the moment settling between them. "What do you want to happen?" Weston exhaled, stepping closer. "You know what I want." Bella swallowed, her gaze searching his. "This started as a game, Weston." He nodded. "And now it's not." Bella let out a slow breath. "I don't need saving. I know. I don't want to be a distraction." "You're not," she exhaled, shaking her head. "Weston." "Just tell me," he said, his voice low, steady. "Do you want this?" Bella hesitated. Then, finally, she whispered, "Yes." Weston smirked. "Good." And then, without another word, he kissed her. The city hummed around them, but in that moment, it didn't matter. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about them.